Okay, lesson 3. In your Google Classroom, click on the assignment, lesson 3. In your instructions, you'll see the file. When you open it in preview mode, you'll need to go to the top right, under more actions, and open in new window in order to get it to where you can download it. Click the download button and it will automatically go to your downloads folder. Now these files that I'm putting in there are, I just clicked show in folder and I'm going to cut it and paste it in lesson 3 folder. But these .psd files will open in Photoshop if you just double click them. We did have files, JPEGs and other files that initially we couldn't open in Photoshop, but your computer should recognize that that's the only program that will open it. So put a lesson 3 folder in your Photoshop folder, organize that so that your 6 weeks test coming up will be a good one. We need to have those folders organized. Your file structure will be a major test grade. Open Photoshop. I'm having a hard time here, as you can tell, just because I have 2 different versions of Photoshop right now and it's having a hard time distinguishing between the 2. Once you open Photoshop, then you'll go to File, Open, navigate to your DIM folder, your Photoshop folder. I have 2 different DIM folders. In your lesson 3 folder, and then double click the OStart file. We're working with selection tools in this lesson, and it is extremely important that we learn these. There are 6 different images that we're going to use different selection tools to cut out and put on the plate. It's going to be easiest if you zoom in on each of the items that we are going to cut out or select and move so that it's easier to select them. This first sand dollar that we're going to select, we're just going to use the magic wand tool. It works well because of the difference between the sand dollar and the background. You need to read these instructions in this pamphlet so that you'll know why we use certain selection tools to select certain things. Some tools are easier than others. Once you click it, you'll drag it over and choose select and deselect so that that's not selected anymore. After the sand dollar, we'll move on to the plate that has snails, I guess they are. I'm not exactly sure what that white thing is in the middle. Maybe that's part of the plate, I don't know. Elliptical marquee tool. Look at the sheet because you're going to use different keys, okay? When you start a selection with the elliptical marquee tool, you can hold down keep your mouse button down the entire time. You can use your space bar to move the selection while you're making the selection. So you can readjust the starting point or the origin of the elliptical marquee tool. Once you get it like you want it, just release the mouse button. And from there, I think they're going to use with the selection tool or with the elliptical marquee tool selected, you're going to use the control key to move it rather than the move tool. The control key, when you hold it down, will turn into, you see the scissors there, and it will cut it from there. You'll drag that bowl onto the upper left portion of the plate. And before you move it, or before you deselect it, it's going to ask you to use your arrow keys and adjust it pixel by pixel. If you hold down your shift key and use your arrow keys, then you'll move it 10 pixels at a time. Here at Show Extras, go to View, Show, Selection, Action, Selection Edges. It is still selected, okay? You just don't have the marching ants anymore. I'm not sure why. You might want to turn those off, but this just shows you how to turn those marching ants off if you want to. Then select, deselect. Control D is a shortcut for deselecting, and that's something that you need to definitely learn how. Here, I finally remembered I needed to save it like I was supposed to. Your first initial last name, lesson 3. Okay, after that plate, we're going to use the elliptical marquee tool again, and we're going to go to Sally's Seashells logo. Here we're going to begin dragging from the approximate center of the logo, and you'll read page 75 because you'll use the space bar, you'll use the shift key to constrain it to a perfect circle. Several keys that you can use in combination that will help you refine your selection. Once you get it like you want it, this one they want you to select the Move tool and move it with the Move tool rather than just using the Control key. You'll zoom back out, choose the Move tool, and you'll drag it to the upper right hand portion of the plate. View, if I can find it, fit on screen automatically goes back to where you can see everything on the screen. We're going to do a couple of different things with this logo. We're going to copy it and paste it. We're going to invert the selection, invert the color of it, and also transform it and make it larger. When you get it over there, first thing you're going to do is change the color of it. So you're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Invert. We're not going to go into detail about exactly what that does. You can read about it, but that's all we're going to do to that before we move on and copy it. With the Move tool selected, if you hold down your Alt key, it will copy whatever you want. That's what we're doing here. Use the Alt key with the Move tool and it copies it. Just drag it, it'll overlap a little bit, and then you're going to go to Edit, Transform, Scale, and you'll see a little bounding box come up. If you hold down the Shift key while you drag a corner, it constrains the proportions. That just means that it makes it the length and the width stay proportionately the same. Approximately 50% larger is what they want. Once you're happy with it, hit Enter. This time you're going to hold down Alt and Shift. Okay? When you hold down Shift, that makes it go at a 45-degree angle from where it is originally. And then you'll do the same thing with Edit, Transform, and Scale. And you'll make that one 50% larger as well. It does remind you at various times to save your work. We're doing a lot of things to these images, so make sure you save your work. Control D is the easier way to deselect that. Next, we are going to use the Magic Wand tool, and I want you to read on page 78 why we use the Magic Wand in certain instances and what it is good for. We're going to use the rectangular marquee tool and actually select around, what is this? Coral? Yeah, I guess this is coral, yes. We're going to select a rectangle around the coral so that we've got white space and the coral selected. Then we're going to choose the Magic Wand key, and you have your tolerances and stuff that you can change. The default is what we need there. That button I just pushed is subtract from selection. So since we had a selection of everything, of white space and the coral, we want to subtract from that selection the white space. So once we do that, only the coral is selected. Go back to view and fit on screen. Eventually I get there. Okay, good. And then we move it to the middle. Deselect it, select, deselect, or Control D. Make sure you save your work. This next one is a little kind of difficult. I have my own preference with the lasso tool, what I prefer, and I can go over that with you. But you need to practice a couple of different ways. You're going to use the lasso tool, and all that is a freehand way to select part of an image. And just this natural lasso tool, the first one, is a little difficult for me. I like to use the magnetic lasso tool. And while you're selecting with the lasso tool, if you hold down the Alt key, it switches to the polygonal lasso tool, which allows you to click and make anchor points wherever you want to. It draws straight lines rather than freehand. So I'm drawing and I'm clicking. As you can see, every time I click, I create a new anchor point. If you mess up, you can hit delete and go back and undo the last anchor point you put down. I think I actually mess up here in a minute. Yeah, I double clicked so that I selected it, and you notice up here I went back to add to selection so that I start over inside, and I switch to the nope, I stayed with the lasso tool. I'm back to freehand. Now I switched back to the polygonal lasso tool, and I click, click, click. I'm selecting parts of this, what is this, oyster, clam? They call it a mussel. I'm selecting part of the mussel that I haven't selected yet, and I make sure I cover over the part that I have selected, and I just double click right there, and it automatically creates it goes back to where I started. So now that I have the mussel selected, we're going to go back and view the whole image and drag it onto the plate. Once we do that, we're going to practice how to rotate a selection and sort of angle it a different way. In order to do that, you go to Edit, Transform, and Rotate. There's a few different ways, but this is going to be the easiest way for us. Outside of the box, you see my curved arrows. Click and drag it so that it has the angle you want, and then you click the actual selection, move it to where you want. I went to try to deselect it, but I hadn't applied the changes yet. That check mark that I just did is just like hitting the return key or the enter key, and that makes it to where it's the bounding box disappears and it's changed to where I want it to. Okay, now to the magnetic lasso tool, and what is this? A shell. We're going to select the shell with the magnetic lasso tool. This one finds the different colors between different images and automatically adds anchor points and allows you the ability to add anchor points. So it tries its best to differentiate between the colors. If I go way over there and start clicking, I did this on purpose, I can start hitting delete here and start deleting where I messed up and go back. As I drag, it's it's doing the anchor points. It's inserting those anchor points by itself. Right there, it grabbed more than I wanted, so I'm going to go back, and put my own anchor point. So you just have to play around with these tools until you get to where you want it. That hard turn there, I made sure I put an anchor point there. As you go around, it adjusts and adds its own anchor points. That one is getting a little off, so I'm going to go back there, As long as you stay close to that edge, close to that line, Photoshop is going to recognize where you want it. When I get back to the very original point, you see the little circle that appears? That means if I click there, I close the selection. And I've ended up selecting the shell. You could also double click, and that will take it from wherever you double click back to your original first click and close the selection that way. Here I choose the move tool and I drag it onto the plate. For this video, I'm not sure exactly how much more I do. I'm not sure if I go into the cropping part yet. We shall see. Yes, I'm going to crop it. Okay, when you crop this, you're going to end up with parts of the image that you don't want. Just the way the image is set up, you're going to go over certain parts of the image that you're not going to want. After you crop, when you release the mouse, you can still adjust where you want to crop. So I do that here and get an approximate area where I want. Okay, that check mark is just like hitting your return key or your enter key. And I'm going to choose the eraser, and that part on the bottom right, I'm going to just erase that. Change the size of my brush. Just erase that out. I think that's all I did on this video. Save it, and I'll see you on the next video.